Hello and welcome to The Urbanist, Monocle's programme all about the built environment. I'm your host, Andrew Tuck. Coming up.
As soon as you step out of the house, if you want to create that safe space for children, you need to understand that can't involve cars, really.
When we were sculpting the program, I was really cautious about having kids always in the middle of every discussion.
Children, they don't learn anything in a standardized playground because they don't have to concentrate on how they move around.
What does a child-friendly city look like? We're in Bratislava this week, reporting from the second edition of the Start with Children Summit. Across 2 days, mayors, architects, planners, academics, and of course children came together in the old market hall in Bratislava to talk about how to build better cities for our youngest residents. The thinking behind the gathering is simple. By putting the youngest members of society at the core of design and planning decisions, we can create cities that are more inclusive, accessible, and equitable for all. That's all ahead in the next 30 minutes, right here on The Urbanist with me, Andrew Tuck. Welcome to today's episode. The city of Bratislava has been at the forefront of the child-friendly design movement. So it's no surprise that it has launched this conference, Start with Children, not only to showcase what it's doing right, but to learn from other cities, activists and placemakers who are delivering change in their cities too. This year, Monocle's senior foreign correspondent and urbanist producer, Carlota Rebelo, was the one on the ground for us, and I'm delighted to say that she joins me now. Carlota, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Andrew. It's nice to be on this side for a change. And Bratislava says hi because, of course, you were there last year at the inaugural Start with Children conference.
Yeah, and I had a great time. Slovakia is a fascinating place, but when you get to Bratislava, they're obviously doing a lot of work around child-friendly cities. So how they moved the debate on from last year?
Yeah, so last year there was a big focus, as you know, on mobility and the street. So the topic and theme this year was housing and neighborhoods. And it's this idea that housing, the home, is where a child life begins. Early childhood impacts so much the upbringing of children that actually this idea not just of creating homes themselves that are better, but neighborhoods, surrounding areas that also help with this. And to give you a bit of perspective, when their program, the City for Children program, was launched 2 years ago, since then 34 school districts have been impacted, and they gave us the numbers. 15,000 children's lives have been impacted by this. And this is just in 2 years and just in one city.
And this is like simple things like stopping parents parking great SUVs outside the gates to a school. So making it safer and easier for kids to navigate their way on foot, for example, or by bicycle to school.
Absolutely. And there's also this element of allowing your child to also explore the city. You know, there was a funny comment at one point in the conference. It's like, when you learn that it's okay if your child is hurt, it's only bad if they're hurt. And, you know, that stumbling over when they're cycling, if there is the safety that, you know, the cars are not a danger, then that's actually a good thing, so that they become more resilient and learn how to navigate the urban environment. But you were asking me about the differences between last year and this year. And I guess the best person to explain that to us is a familiar voice for our listeners here, Petra Marko, who's the chief executive of the Metropolitan Institute of Bratislava, one of the co-organizers of the conference. Let's have a listen.
Well, it's where childhood begins, so it's really important to think about the home and its immediate surroundings. It's not just housing, but it's the neighborhood. So we're looking at a larger scale, and we are looking at how it all comes together. And interestingly, a lot of the conversations are about streetscape again, because as soon as you step out of the house, if you want to create that safe space for children, and we've been hearing a lot about the importance of doorstep play, for example, over the last 2 days, you need to understand that can't involve cars, really. So it's been really fascinating, but housing and housing design really affects children's well-being. There's lots of statistics and research. I mean, there's the side of it which is about, you know, if you have a moldy environment and unhealthy construction and all of that, but I think what we are looking at here is more to do with livability and with the opportunities of sharing and caring. So a lot of the conversations are around care and the shift from this nuclear family model where everybody has their own everything and then, driving their kids to school or whatnot, to housing and neighborhoods, which don't necessarily have to be co-housing, but which encourage more independence for children so that they can get out of the house and play in a shared courtyard while the parents are working or while one of the parents is cooking. And this is really encouraging more outdoor play for children. It's good for their mental health. We know that we have an obesity crisis amongst young people. We know that we have a mental health crisis amongst young people and this rise of digitalization, which is very unhealthy. So creating housing that encourages more outdoor activities for kids is a great way to do it. And the other aspect is, of course, that also the caring and the carers, the parents, or they don't have to be necessarily parents, are taking a huge branch of the caring work on these days with this nuclear family model and kind of, reliant on cars and so on. I came across really interesting statistics that in 1950s United States, stay-at-home moms spent less hours per week with their children than working mothers in the States today. So I think that's a really stark statistic that shows you how much more freedom kids have had and what happened in the second half of 20th century with the rise of cars and more infrastructure for cars. So we're kind of rethinking the home and the neighborhood and the relationships that it can encourage to create.
That was Petra Marco there. Now, as we heard in that clip, there's been a lot of work over the past couple of years to deliver a lot of these topics in Bratislava. So it was really nice to hear from some of the architects as well on some of these new housing solutions. One of them was actually not a Slovak architect, it was a British model called Marmalade Lanes, which took the lane in between these houses to create a communal space. And now it's been deployed elsewhere, started in Cambridge and is going elsewhere. And it was really sweet to hear them talk about it because, you're entering a safe communal space when it's okay if your child leaves some toys behind. So it's simple things like that.
Well, who are we going to hear from next then?
Now we're going to hear from Juraj Benetin. So the two of us have met him actually a couple of years ago when we were in Bratislava and we had an amazing dinner with a fantastic group of architects and planners. And he used to work with the current mayor now, Matúš Valo, and he is the head of Compass Architects in Bratislava. And they've delivered these two new urban projects. One of them is called Urban Residences, the other is called Svirn. And they both are putting this idea of child-friendly neighborhoods at the center with this idea of communal courtyards, shared amenities, easing the burden of care. So let's hear a bit about this project.
This was kind of an abandoned street that was busy with cars, but not with pedestrian flow, not with retail and urban life. And what we created here from the beginning, and this is thanks to the developer who was focused on something that everybody told was not possible, to make a lively street there, which now kind of enhances the environment. We are seeing a lot of other cafes and other breakfast joints and very popular things coming into the area, and this area is becoming like a center of its own. The other thing is an open courtyard which serves as a city park. It serves as a local city park, but I actually know families that come there from quite far away from the city, which is not very common in our mindset, let's say, which is still quite individualistic, and we are working with that. And the mindset is that if you pay for maintenance of this area as a resident, you wouldn't want a general public to come and take it. So this is like an experiment in this kind of process, and it's actually working. After 5 years of operation, the inhabitants of this project had a voting on whether they want still to this be an open public park or not, and they actually voted yes. So it's surprising because it costs them money. If anything happens, it's done by visitors, but they have to pay for the repair, but they still accept it. This is for us a very nice signal.
It shows a change in mindset more than anything. And when we're having, Bratislava is having these deep conversations about what it wants the future of the city to be like. That just shows that the mindset is changing, that there's openness for debate. What does this mean then for children? Because that's why we're here today. What does that mean not only for the children residents of that part of the town that are using the courtyard, but those that come and visit and might meet their friends there?
Yeah, we're architects, so we believe that the change can be done also by architectural solutions. That's what we believe in. So we see this on projects that are city-like, that are urban, that are welcoming, that are open. They actually kind of attract people that have this mindset, and this mindset kind of grows neurally into the surrounding areas. So yeah, that's, for us, this is very important. For the kids, it's very clear. We have a aging population. We have to, in terms of big politics also, we need to emphasize and create spaces that are welcoming for children. That's just something that has never been wrong to do. Like, there's never been a project where we would say to ourselves, oh, we did too much for the children's infrastructure. That's never happening. So yeah.
And now let's talk about Svin. What is different here about this project? And again, how are all these things we're talking about coming to life there?
Bratislava has a new downtown that maybe some of your listeners have seen if they've visited the city. It's very dominant. And this is kind of our intervention into the downtown question, because I'm not a big fan of the downtown myself. It has some very nice pieces, but as a whole it needs some time, and probably some decisions were not the best decisions. So we are bringing in a very high density residential area in a very traditional block structure that continues from the surrounding, connects to the school that is nearby, connects to the National Monument, Heritage Monument building that we have in the center of the project. And then we create 3 blocks that have a structure of different types of open and enclosed spaces, because this is a very downtown area. So we also have enclosed spaces in there with children's infrastructure also, so that people can feel safe to let their kids go there.
Juraj Benetton there. And, one of the things that was so interesting for me about this edition of the conference was that there were children everywhere in the crowd watching the sessions, actively participating. I don't know if you had a similar experience last year.
I think there were fewer kids, to be honest, on stage. There were some video elements, but not that many children, I think, in the audience. But now we're going to hear from 14 of them, I believe.
Yes, well, one spokesperson for the 14 of them. But it was a really amazing moment where these are the students of Brilliant Stars International School. We talked a lot about participation, and you need to hear from your core audience. And they were brought on stage with an appropriate adult who the first thing that she said was, these are our clients, so we need to hear from them. And it was, this idea, one of the kids was saying there's a lot of focus about early childhood and playgrounds and places to play. But what happens after we grow old and we don't want to play anymore? So that's why we tend to hang out at the mall. I wish the city would build a space that, has food, has places to hang out. And it was a really funny contrast when you stop playing and you start hanging out in the city, and that element of coolness. So let's hear just a bit of what some of these children want for their city of Bratislava.
Our school often hosts events and activities to help society. The school is a place where everyone works together. We have community initiatives such as craft sales, joint book sales, and jogathons, which help us raise money for charity. We care a lot for the environment, so as a school we also organize environmental activities, for example, planting trees in other school gardens and cities, trash pickups, which help our community keep clean. A part of our school's program is going on unique and educational field trips, including city and embassy offices, EU headquarters, and inviting many inspiring guests to learn from. And lastly, we focus on character building, which educates us about different virtues and how to apply them in the world. For instance, helpfulness, perseverance, tactfulness, and many more. We believe that having a safe and joyful environment is the key to thriving educationally. Thank you, Vicky.
Well, that was great and fascinating, as you say, that not all kids want to be heading to the playground. But actually, some do want to head to the playground. But even there, what's fascinating is you met some people rethinking what the playground can be.
Yes, a fascinating conversation with Helen Nebelong. So she's a Danish landscape architect and really a pioneer of this movement of the natural playground. It is an old concept, but she has brought it back to the forefront. And it's this idea that, natural playgrounds with no structure are actually the best for children. They stimulate creativity. This idea that you order a playground online and it's the same model, bright colors, etc. You don't allow for children to actually explore how to play. And there's the element as well of being connected to nature and allow children to, climb up a tree. Again, if they get a tiny bit hurt, that is okay. And again, this question of participation came back to it because Helle was telling me about, she has projects, of course, in Copenhagen, but she did a project recently in Illinois, in the United States. And of course, two different cultures in terms of how they approach public space, how they approach children being outside. Of course, in the US, we know the car is a bigger issue, but the principles applied there were the same. And at the center of it all, it's about involving children in the process. There was a period where she asked children in the neighborhood to draw their favorite fish, make a drawing of a fish. And then she incorporated those, 15, 20 individual drawings of fishes in the water feature in the park. So you feel represented. And it was just a really amazing reminder that sometimes, adults don't know best, and it's good to hear from the core audience. Helle told me a bit more about what the movement entails and actually what are some of these false friends when creating new playgrounds. Let's have a listen.
During many years, designers have been very focused on making play spaces that are very funny for children to play on, and they use a lot of structures from catalogs because they are focusing on safety. And in the catalogs you can look up and it says this structure is safe, so you don't have to worry about it. But also it's a grown-up mistake that everything that has to do with children should be colorful and funny and as safe as possible. It's a mistake because the more standardized a playground is, the more dangerous it is, in my opinion. Because children, they don't learn anything in a standardized playground because they don't have to concentrate on how they move around because everything is, equal. So it's not a very good challenge for children.
You had an amazing quote during your presentation, which was about children playing on top of a tree and that they were saying, oh, it's great, the best thing is to have nothing. So it's almost about, allowing for creativity and for children to make up their own mind on how they can use a space.
Yeah, that is exactly what I have experienced during the years. The children, they want to put their own marks on the play. They don't like structures that don't leave any imagination from them. I once heard a child saying, I don't like to play with toys that play with itself, and it's the same in a playground. You have to leave it open-ended so that children, they can find out what it is. It could change from one day to another if it is not defined beforehand.
Tell me about the importance of getting these voices heard, because a lot of times, you have adults designing for kids, but we need to ask them what they want.
Yeah, I think it's very important to involve children because when you involve them and the playground is designed and their ideas are integrated in the playground, they feel that they have designed the playground, and it really makes them very proud. And it's a good lesson also about democracy, that if you want to have influence in the city, in the playscapes, in parks and so on, you are invited and we will listen to your voice. And I think that's a good way to introduce democracy for children.
Now, we've been having several conversations here this week, and one of them was about the idea of kids' offline and online worlds. And of course, there's a lot of worry about screen time, etc. But one of the things that came up was that often, if given the choice, kids prefer to go outside. It's just that the environment is not ready for that. Hearing you talk about how amazing playgrounds can be and to make kids feel included, is that part of the solution? Is that how we get children that actually play outside in an era of digital and technology taking over?
Exactly. We can't just say, get away from the screens. We have to offer them alternatives. One alternative is that you leave your own phone, leave your own screens, take your child in the hand as long as they want to hold your hand. Get out and experience nature or get out in the city. Walk the city in a slow pace without any mobile phones or screens. Talk about everything you experiences, the birds, the old structures, sculptures and things like that, and walk in a slow pace. Don't hurry from A to B, make it an adventure just walking in the city.
What amazing interviews you've gathered. Next, we're going to hear how other people gather data and collect information, and particularly one organisation that began by looking at mothers and children and kind of following them a little bit, to be honest, with a camera to find out what they're up to.
Absolutely. This is a fantastic story behind the work of Eva Kail, who's an amazing urban planner. Her work led to the creation of the Frauenbüro in Vienna back in the 1990s. And ever since, her career, she's consulted with cities all around the world and created something that is now called gender mainstreaming. And this is the idea that, you need to look at city planning and urban planning with the perspective of all genders and not just from a male perspective. And she started precisely by back in the 1990s with a group of photographers following women and children around. And, some things were very evident. Women tend to do more trips because they're caregivers, so they will drop the kids off to school, go back home, go to the supermarket, in and out, whereas traditionally, particularly back then, men would go out for the day to work and come back at the end of the day. So how do we make sure those journeys are better and easier? And this is a bit of a nod to the 15-minute city that we now know. In terms of moving a city around with a stroller, if a stroller can't navigate the sidewalk, it's very unlikely a wheelchair will be able to. So it's, again, that principle that when you make a city better for one part of society, you are making it better and more inclusive for everyone. And now she's been working on this new project, Lake City Aspern. Part of it is already open, and you arrive at the metro stop and immediately you will have the grocery store on the way to the nursery to pick up your kids, with a huge playground in the middle, very closed off to cars, but with an access point so that children can roam free. Trips are easy. And it's, again, all these principles of ensuring we can move around a bit better.
It's, I think, one of the largest urban development areas in Europe. It's about 220 hectares. In the end, there should 25,000 people live there, so 11,000 flats, just to get an idea of the dimension. And it's developed step by step for different neighborhoods. I always say gender planning is a strategy of quality assessment, and Vienna has developed over the years on different levels and scales and different topics, diverse instruments and proceedings. And here in Lake City Aspern, it all came together. And for example, it's about schools, because of course with a population like that, already 11,000 people live there, so it's a small town. You need primary schools, you need grammar schools, you need kindergartens. And so one important issue was about the quality of open space of schools and kindergartens, because we made a check of the structure, of the block structure of the first design, urban design, and we realized that the blocks are too small for integrating adequate open space for children and still leaving some courtyard facilities for the other residents. So we really told the designers that you have to change the block structures. This was one outcome, or this regular checking of the developer competitions of the quality of housing projects, for example. So as a gender expert, I was part of the jury, and I always looked at children's rooms, for example, if they have adequate size and adequate shape, because it's really sometimes surprising to what solutions economically forced architects came. Yeah.
No, we're hearing the trams go by, and it reminds me as well about the issue of transportation, because that's also a big part of this project, and that idea that it is easy to go from one place to the next, that traditionally caregivers do more trips in cities. So it's about creating a development where all those journeys are made easy for everyone.
So I think this is one big issue there, so really to release care, to make care work easy as possible, because it's a really car-reduced neighborhood. So a lot of the small residence roads are car-free, and there are collective garages, so you have very few entry points for cars, and therefore the neighborhood is really safe, and children start to walk around by themselves or bike by themselves at an early age. earlier than in the average neighborhoods of Vienna.
You have infrastructure as well for them to learn how to bike, right?
Yeah, there is a biking playground also where they already can train. I really love it because there are some hills and there are a line of a tram track, because this is really dangerous also for grown-ups, so they can really train how to pass by or cross tram tracks. And I think this is really, if it is playful activities, but they are really empowered to use the bikes and encouraged. I think there are a lot also, the public space is really designed in an inviting manner. There are a lot of benches, and a big topic is always fences. Fences can have quite an oppressive character and a sharp distinction and no use. Just this really get control of the private owned site. And in Lake City, Aspen, because we have there also a lot of social housing, subsidized housing, where the social orientation of planning is already asked in the planning design. They are really designed like sitting facilities. Yeah? So this is a visual marked, but you can use them and people can sit. And I think these low thresholds, they are offering additional quality.
How do you feel about the future of cities when it comes to being more inclusive places, or when it comes to design policies that include women, include children? Are you optimistic about the future of cities?
A huge question. I think we are facing a tremendous challenge to the climate crisis. I think it's in human nature that we just deny the threat that is really coming to us. But on the other side, I think there is a huge potential if we are able to organize the necessary transformation of public space. I see a huge synthesis between climate change, adaptation of public space, and user-friendly design. Because we as feminist planners have argued since 40 years for the importance of green areas, of sustainable traffic, amenity facilities in public space from the user side. And now the climate topic comes in and argues the necessity from the microclimate side. And I think this really, if it's done, the necessary transformation, if it's done in a social sensitive way, so to start with garden streets in the areas where the economic vulnerable people live, where the heat vulnerable people, also the small ones, the little ones and the high-aged people live, just to identify not only the hotspots, but also where the hotspots for the social vulnerable groups are, then it really can make a difference.
Well, finally, Carlota, we're going to hear from Mateusz Walu, who's the mayor of Bratislava on his second term. Really interesting guy. We've covered some of the work that he's done before. Just quickly tell us, what did he have to say?
You know, this is a movement that really has started to at least take shape under his leadership. And it's been 2 years since this City for Children program started to be implemented. And he really has made a point of including kids' voices in city participation. And it was really interesting to speak to Mateusz this time around and hear how so many of the projects that we've heard about over the years have now taken shape, including Bratislava now completed the first city-built affordable housing project, which was something that when we first met him was still, just taking off the ground then. But he told me as well about an amazing story that includes the skate park of Bratislava, which is on the other side of the river. Let's have a listen.
We're trying to not only catch up, but also to push the envelope. That's important for us. And this conference is a part of that, to put in one room the funders, money are always important, the people with know-how, architects, everybody who knows everything about the kids, and of course the mayors or city officials. That's very important for us. Last year was more about public space, which is like the first very natural step in this. This year was more about the neighborhood, the housing a little bit, but maybe neighborhoods, like environment from urbanistic point of view. It was very natural and it was a very easy step, I think. I really, when we were sculpting the program, I was really cautious about having kids always in the middle of every discussion, and I think it works also during the conference.
When we talk about children, often we say it takes a village and we need to look after each other. But you observe that actually happens with the older kids to the younger kids quite naturally in Bratislava skate park. And you kind of almost decided to honor it with a message in the park too.
The skate park is very close to the huge park where also small kids with their parents coming. So it's natural that these small kids want to hang out in a skate park. But bigger boys or girls want to have a space. They want to be quicker, a more dangerous way how to navigate skate park. But what we observed, and other people observed, that when the small kid is strolling somewhere or is go there, everybody stops. Everybody say, yeah, we have a visitor, stop, guys. And it's lovely. It's very natural way. They don't need a mayor to tell them nothing, But in a way, we saw this phenomenon and we put a writing on the wall, big wall writing, which say, the stronger, bigger, older take cares of weaker, smaller, and younger. And we really wanted to honor this process, the thing is happening there, and I like it very much.
It really, I think it sums up so much of what we've been talking here about today, which is, and yesterday, over the past few days, this idea that by including children in the whole process, we do end up with better cities. Are you leaving here today feeling hopeful, feeling happy?
I'm leaving here today full of ideas, full of amazing examples I saw from other speakers, and with a huge chunk of work which is in front of us. My dream is to not try to make of Bratislava the best city to grow up only during my work as a mayor, but also for other mayors after me, like to really start this big vision or idea of the city. And we need years, we need many years to really accomplish it. We see other city doing it. So this is my task. I'm going to think how to really cement this idea into the next generation of leaders of Bratislava.
Well, amazing, Carlota. What were your takeaways from your time in Bratislava?
There were a couple. There was a really interesting discussion about, as we are having these conversations about screen times for kids, that we also need to talk about the city, because we can't campaign for kids to go offline if the city is a hostile environment. So we need to ensure that they are safe and there are places for play. Participation was a theme that kept coming up and up again. And I think, lastly, I really like the idea of a change in perspective. There was one presentation from an architecture critic that was able to take 3 months off work to just follow his son around and let him guide him as he explored the built environment. And it was fascinating to see the videos and the pictures of when you allow a child to be like, yes, we're going to spend 2 hours by this handrail because now that's a racetrack, and you just allow the innocence and joy and play to be brought into your life, how that changes something that you might walk past every day and you just sometimes don't even see it at all.
Well, great reporting, and just fascinating, as you say, to get a different perspective, a different angle, quite literally in some senses, on what it means to be in a city. And that's all for this week's episode of The Urbanist. You can follow us for new editions of the show every week, and you can subscribe to Monocle magazine for reports on all things design, architecture and urbanism too. Just visit monocle.com. The Urbanist is produced by Carlota Rebelo and by David Stevens, who also edits the show. I'm Andrew Tuck. Goodbye, and thank you for listening, City Lovers.